If you build it, more will come. Oh yeah, welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Morpheus podcast, live here on the 24th of March 2025. And as you might surmise, this is the podcast where I showcase my engineering skills to build the better future that we all want. Okay, no. Well, actually, maybe a tiny little bit right at the end. I'm actually a mining engineer, so I was better at more of the destructive / extractive portions of, of creating the world, which was very fine and dandy. But no, today we're going to be jumping into the last bucket of the 4 Cs, the community bucket, aka also known as the builders bucket. We'll talk about what that name change is all about and what is actually being built in this, where are the AI agents at, and perhaps even a little bit of the mess that I've stumbled myself into. So let's just kick it off. Let's jump right into it. The builders have gathered. Alrighty, we've come to the pointy end of the stick. This is the part of Morpheus that I was most interested in, the kind of whole vision of everything that I expect / want from this project and hope that it can deliver. And this is the valuable thing, the AI agents. And so let me try and do my best impression. Zion, hear me. It's true what many of you have heard. The agents have gathered. And then we'll we'll stop the quote there, because if you actually tune into that section of the movie, it says the machines have gathered and they've actually gathered to kill them all. So not good things, but that's all right. That's what we're doing here. Hopefully there's going to be no attacking going on with our AI agents that we're creating. So the builder subnets are officially live and cranking out for rewards for those who are builders on the Morpheus network. I believe the first batch of them went out on the 15th of March, so just over a week ago, 2025. And as usual, 24% of the protocol rewards go to this bucket, and etc. We'll talk about tokenomics in next week's episode. Now, it talks, I said the builder subnets are live, and subnet is just a random nomenclature word. I think it's just there to say like, hey, you're part of a larger network. So if you're a building on it, you're a builder subnet instead of just being a builder. Why is that? I don't know, but sounds kind of cool. So that's what it is, the builder subnets. So what is a builder? What is a builder? I might hear you asking. For those of you who've tuned into the Mere Mortals conversations in the past, or perhaps you're a more recent listener as well, you'll know that I'm quite passionate about languages, about terminology, how words are used. Although I am not the greatest speaker myself with all of my little facial tics, the vocab tics, the ums and ers and all these sorts of things, I don't think I actually want to bother to become a great speaker. I am very interested in languages themselves, and you'll see this with my learning of Spanish, German, Portuguese, etc., and also because I read a whole ton with the book reviews. There's a big, long way of saying that words matter, and one consistent thing that I've noticed in the Morpheus, I guess, project change over time in the last year and a half, roughly, is the changing of the words between community and builders. So we've got our little Morpheus the Builder here on your screen. And it actually used to be community right at the start. The 4 Cs, I keep on saying the 4 Cs, code, capital, compute, and community. But wait, we're talking about builders. What the hell where's the community at? And, taking my little anthropological observation, which is somewhat what this podcast is turning into. In fact, it's a snapshot of time. And I would say that the point of this bucket is kind of between these two things. It's about builders and it's also about community. And the word builder is now in much more frequent use. So I guess we'll start with that. What is a builder? And its popularity, I guess now makes sense because it's kind of more intuitive. The whole reason we're here is to have uncensored, private, and therefore decentralized AI agents. So if you're in the Morpheus project for not that, I'm not sure why you're here. And to have these things, someone needs to build them. There needs to be a creation of these particular agents. There's probably not going to be just one. I think the Morpheus project is about agentic AI as a whole and not just a singular one, but many, many. And I think I talked about this in the super agents episode. And in particular, I'm talking about those that are, connected to a Web3 wallet that can interpret human language and commands from human language. And therefore, they'll have the agency, the AI agent, in pursuing the goals/tasks that you create for it, and probably in an increasingly complex series of tasks or steps to get to the end goal with, probably more inputs needed from you. So, some examples here so you know what I'm talking about. The first iterations of these will be probably relatively basic, and you might be getting it to just engage in Web3 crypto stuff. So you could be saying like, hey, I want you to, I'll give you, 100 USDC or something. It's a little starting bankroll here. Go out and farm some, engagement farm. So, set up a Twitter for it or things like that, social media, engagement farm, perhaps get some airdrops as rewards from that, trade up with these rewards to X amount of ETH, sell the ETH token in tranches, so, dollar cost averaging out, and perhaps, or sell into ETH and then stake the yield, or, variations of these things where you're just saying, do all of these things and it has access to the wallet and can actually do it. Now, later ones, the future that I envision and imagine, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years down the line is going to be much more easier and basic, which will be, let's take something like starting a business from scratch, for example. And you could start by saying like, okay, I want to find a niche product, or there's something that I think will do well. Let's take the VFriends IP, for example, the NFT series, which I think is rather interesting. And I could see there's perhaps a demand for infotainment, a podcast on that. So can you create me a podcast or, one of those faceless YouTube channels, for example, design a website for me. And if you can't do that, pay someone to design the website for me. That should look like this, XYZ, or perhaps even other agents to do that. And okay, I've noticed there's a trend of live shopping coming. Can we do something where you'll buy the cards from eBay for me? You'll send them to my address. I'll, set them up in nice locations or something, and you and I can interact together on a podcast to sell these things in a live shopping format, and maybe set aside some for myself and to build a collection. That's just a big random example of saying like, this is the kind of future where you'll maybe just say something and ask it to, can you buy me these cards from eBay, and it will need to, I guess, like start up an eBay account, have a wallet connected. Can you use crypto on eBay? Okay, no. Maybe is there a third-party app which will allow me to use USDC via this mechanism to put it in here, or perhaps create a physical card that's somewhere linked to an address. All sorts of things where it's like, okay, I know what the end goal is, but how to get there, I will have to do many different things. And when I'm saying I'm talking about I as the agent doing that. So, pure agent stuff is what I'm really talking about here. And to do all of that, you need someone to build something that is capable of doing this. Now, community also reflects this bucket in a manner slightly less now. For example, in the white paper, right in the intro, it's simply referred to as the community of users. So this is people using the Morpheus network and the infrastructure and the agents. And in particular, the, original vision was that these would be the people providing data to train the models, and that was the community bucket, in essence. Within the first couple of months, I was trolling just through the Discord and places like that. And I noticed, okay, there's this trend or shift of it being not really about providing your data, which is more important, but which is actually creating front ends of websites or tools or apps or interfaces to interact with the Morpheus network. And therefore, that does community capture that completely? No, that sounds like people building things. So funnily enough, I actually wouldn't be surprised if this portion gets revisited again at some point in the Morpheus project, because sure, I don't know how we've all realized that data is insanely valuable. This is why places like Facebook and Instagram are just ridiculously wealthy and created a lot of value, because they just captured so much data, and that data is also now, extremely valuable for all of these large language models, which need fresh human data. Fresh, it makes it sound like they're vampires, to sustain themselves. And our data, they need new stuff as well. They've probably trawled as much as they can, but they need caches of new stuff. So will the Morpheus network help incentivize that, where people actually get paid for that? Is that going to come from here? I don't know. I feel like surely at some point, somewhere, some form of business would be able to create this thing where it's like, okay, you actually provide your data, you get to interact with the website itself, the Instagram or whatever it is, and you actually get paid for doing this for, obviously it's hard to do, because then people just engagement farm and really provide low value stuff to try and get rewards. You can't get anything for free, and if you're the product, and if it is free, then you're the product. But if I have something that's super valuable, I am paying in a way, but shouldn't I be paid for it? I don't know. Just spitballing here. But this really shows how the flipping of the Morpheus project went, where it went away from, okay, you provide your data, that's how what the community bucket for is. No, you're the one building something, and you get rewarded from the protocol for that. So we'll see what happens in the future with that. Maybe that'll make a comeback in some shape or form. So who is building at the moment? And I'm just going to go through a list of some of the tooling, front ends, stuff that is popular, that I find interesting, that I know a little bit about. And we'll just go right at the top of the list that you can see on your screen here. My super agents is leading the pack in terms of the amount of people staking, the amount of more stake to it. And I didn't talk about the tokenomics once again of the builder's bucket, but essentially it has many of the features that you'll see in the code and capital, and coming into the compute as well, which is, there's the power factor for staking. So if I, as the builder, say I'm not going to touch these rewards from this for 6 years, then you get a power factor applied to that, indicating your long-term alignment, I guess, with the Morpheus project, and not needing to sell as early, something like that, and all those sorts of things. So with my super agents, what that's doing is apparently it's just like a lot of what I talked about in episode 3 on that super agents article by David Johnston, is creating those sort of things. So with this website, I tried using it myself, still haven't really figured out how to do it. I haven't spent a whole lot of time on it either. But you could create your own agent, which will do things like DCA for you, periodic claiming, data analysis, create your own agent. And the reward type for staking to this is TBA, to be announced. Morelord, we've talked about this many times, website and analytics, once again, TBA coming for that. CoinCap, this is prices, market cap, rankings, API access is what you get from it, as well as a yield. So they'll provide some more back to you for staking with them. And we've got Tales and Conquest, which is a text-based RPG role-playing game with an AI game master. So you can see how the AI agent is coming into that. This will give you early access and a more yield. And probably one of the easiest to understand ones is a Venice, which is access to the Venice Pro with, I believe it's 20 more staked. Or if you received some of the VVV airdrop, if you have 100 of that, you can also get it. One of the things I loved about Morpheus right at the start, 6 months ago, was the access to Venice Pro by having one more in your wallet, which I found extremely useful. And that was one of the things I like seeing real life use cases of, okay, if I hold a token or if I have a thing, this is what I can do with it. And that was just a real blindingly obvious, great one. I actually kept 100 VVV from the, funnily enough, like I sold everything else, but kept 100 just because, like, yeah, sure, thank you. I'll keep that. And you exactly need 100. So I got very lucky with that one. So I'm not staking anymore to Venice because I already have that from other things. If you go to more.org and the dashboard for the builders list, or morelord.com, you can see this list that I'm talking about. You can go through it, have a look at these different people who are building it, a whole bunch of others. I'll just list off some here: Morpheus Asia, Y Network, Katara, Nounspace Tom. There's a whole bunch of things going on here. I'm not calling out any in particular. You'll notice there's a both Arbitrum and Base network, which you can see. I'll be talking in the future about how More is chain agnostic and why that's important. So you'll in future, I imagine a lot of this will just get abstracted away, where it'll just be, staked to this agent, and it doesn't matter what network that you're interacting with, it'll automatically know. Now, personally, I've yet to stake to any of these for one good reason, which is I haven't got my wallet set up secure. With all of this stuff, because it's so new, it's, I think, wise to have some precautions of realizing that things can go wrong. And, if you stake, there's the lock period. Maybe the contract has an exploit. Who knows? Especially if it's new, it takes time for all of these things to get figured out. The front end of more.org or things like this could be hacked. All these sorts of things. I'm using these terms very loosely, and but you can understand things can go wrong and not behave as you expect them to behave. So personally, what I do, I like to break up wallets and have just really experimental ones with minimal amounts of money in, nothing that I would be devastated if it got drained, and use that to experiment, play around with. Obviously, the longer time goes on, the more incentives, the more money that is being thrown at things, the more secure it becomes with more eyeballs on it. When the pot prize is bigger, it draws the attention, both good and bad, of people looking for, okay, why is this valuable? So one of the things I've learned from my friend Chris Fisher over at Jupiter Broadcasting is that it's good to play around with minimal amounts. And I know people who have stuffed up wallets, who have done all the bad things, kept money on FTX, for example, of setting up multi-sigs when they weren't particularly, technically capable, and locking stuff in there. You got to be careful with all of these things. So, that's all my little word of caution. Just when you're interacting with these things, have some thoughts with regards to that. Now, you might be saying, "What the hell, Kyrin? The whole purpose of Morpheus is these AI agents, and you didn't just list off any then. There was none there. What's going on? Where are the agents at? And can we fix it?" Well, I don't know, is the question to that, answer to that. Even Bob the Builder here is looking a little bit flustered, so a little bit stressed out. It's very new. Like I said, it's a week old, the builders bucket, in terms of distributing rewards, and where that thing was available, that list was probably available like a month or 2 months ago. So in terms of being able to join this is still early days, early days. So if you're being built, something's being built on it, it just takes a long ass time for people to realize what's there and if it's valuable or not. And a lot of it's just in the intention of the overall vision, and then of people being able to actually build on it. And one of the kind of memes circulating around is build it and they will come, build it and more will come. And you just got to build stuff, and it's like upfront costs, and you'll see over time if it's valuable or not. So one of the things I mentioned, Chris Fisher, just before, he was back in Bitcoin in the earlier days. I believe he started off the first Bitcoin podcast called Plan B in 2013, I believe it was, maybe 2014. It was around that time period. And one of the things he highlights is, he used to have a lot of BTC back then, or would be considered a lot right nowadays. And the whole ethos of the time was to spend your Bitcoin, because it's a payment network and you want to get it off the ground. And so that was kind of the zeitgeist at the time. Use your BTC, spend it, utilize it. And of course, if you're doing that, you're not hoarding it. And so he unfortunately has way less now than he had back then. And this is ouch, first of all. And there's also a good incentive as to be like, okay, when you're thinking about these things, you got to find that mix between using it and then also perhaps treating it as partly as an investment, and finding that little mix between what you personally want to do. So when you're thinking about this, okay, whole bunch of random stuff there. There's no amazing plug and play agents. I think it's just in the future, I think they'll come across. As people realize that the problems of having crypto and an agent together and a token linked together, there's a lot of things related to that. At the moment, you can see a lot of them do. I'll list off some: AI, XBT, Virtuals, Luna, Doqueen, Truth Terminal. They've all got their own funding mechanisms via tokens. And whilst it's fun, gambling on these things and people are enjoying doing that, I'm not sure that is the model that'll lead to the world that I envision, where you want to have a bit of separation where builders can actually build these things, get rewarded, but they're not having to deal with like, what are the tokenomics of this? How am I going to distribute this out? And things like this. No, it should be a simple plug and play thing where it's like, I've developed an agent, I list it on the Morpheus builders, I get some rewards from that and people stake to it. And the marketplace of agents is kind of what I envision for all of this and hope comes to fruition. But like I said, Bitcoin, peer-to-peer electronic cash, certainly hasn't found itself as that now. It's a store of value. Will it ever get to that state? Perhaps, but perhaps it takes just a long time period to find that price appreciation and value to become a bit more stable over time, less volatile, and then that is what it can be used for. Perhaps Morpheus has a similar thing going on, and it'll just take time for it to reach its kind of end goal and end state. And maybe it's not even the end goal and end state that was originally envisioned. If you look at the white paper, a whole bunch of things have changed since then, notably one of them being the community/builders bucket. So, it's that model is a bit too fragmented in a way, with all these individual agents running around with their own tokens and things like that. And I imagine they'll eventually come over. Like I said, it's a freaking week old, 2 weeks old. So calm your horses. Can we fix it? Bob the Builder doesn't need to be stressed out. I think we probably can. So much like the capital and code bucket, compute, I'm going to stay well away from. I want to help participate here. And you can help participate with me by actually staking to the Mere Morpheus podcast subnet. That's indeed correct. I've created one and actually got it out live probably just before this episode. I know just before this episode started. So simple enough, go onto more.org, find the builder dashboard, and you can see my subnet in particular down there. I think I'm one of 100 maybe that's on the list. There's not that many. And you can stake to me. But what are you building, Kyrin? What have I kind of accidentally fallen into something here? Help! I accidentally built an agent, a More agent. And I've been thinking for a while, probably the last 6 months, of like, I wouldn't mind trying my hand at creating an agent of a Kyrin agent, perhaps, or perhaps it would just be a Mere Mortals podcast agent. I've certainly got data in terms of, it's proprietary in a way in that it's mine. I created it, but it's out for free public use. When you put things out in a podcast, you agreeing to not have DRM, digital rights management, and so all of that info was out there. In terms of thousands of hours of audio of myself or video of myself and my co-host Juan, translations of our audio into text, thousands of hours of that on podcasts that are both niche and broad. If you've tuned into the Mere Mortals conversations, you might be like, damn, you guys are all over the place. One day you're talking about fitness, next is self-development, then it's technology, then it's travel. Pick a topic, God damn it, and stick to it. I've never enjoyed that myself, and it's actually a really terrible strategy for creating a podcast and a brand. You probably should start off niche, and then if it gets popular, you can kind of expand out from that, such as what Bitcoin did, if you want to look at that one. But this is actually where having such a broad category of things that I've talked upon and interacted with is actually coming in clutch. So booyah, Kyrin from the past, making good decisions. But yeah, essentially what I'm thinking of doing is to create an agent, which would be kind of educational content about Morpheus perhaps, or infotainment related to this project in particular, because it definitely feels like there's a underserved market for it. I find it super exciting and interesting. Obviously, I've created a whole podcast on it, and maybe I could turn this podcast into an AI Kyrin who's doing it. And it's, I'd want it to be valuable. I'd want it to actually be interesting and not just, reading off random text. But yeah, we'll see. I would like to do that. I think that would be kind of cool. So my job here is done. Wipe my hands clean, and you could be asking, but you didn't do anything. And I left the part out of this meme where I'm grabbing my cloak and just straight up dipping. That's just I would like to do that, but am I gonna? This is one of those things where I'm going to make no promises. I would certainly like to attempt it and try it, but I attempted and tried to learn Python, and that was a absolute abysmal failure, disaster, in that I didn't enjoy it, and so there was no way I was going to keep continuing to do it. So creating an agent, Kyrin, that's not an easy thing to do. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it by now. So I would have to spend time learning how to interact with these things. I'm not going to code it myself, so I would need perhaps something like My Super Agents to help me create one. Or I've yet to dive into the whole ELIZA, virtuals, all those sorts of frameworks where you can help create them. So that, I'm talking about the building of something there. What I've done mostly for this part is actually more on the community side of things. So obviously I've created this podcast, which I hope is educational and has helped people out. However, is that deserving of being, maybe under the old definition of community? This podcast could fall under a community and deserve to be rewarded from the protocol for that. Is it in this current definition? I'd say probably not. If it was just me creating this podcast, no, there's no point of me getting rewarded from the protocol for that. Even if that's what members of the community would wish to happen, for example. So there was actually a guy early on in the Discord, February 2024, I believe it was. And he was from a podcasting network, Block something. And he wrote up this thing where he's like, this is really interesting, exciting. I propose to create a podcast with this. We'll do this many metrics. We'll get this many views and engagement. It'll take 10 hours a week or something to do this. And it's like, cool. All right, man. You're free and fine to do that. But getting rewarded from the protocol from that, that's probably not going to happen. And he was rightfully told, like, this is not how it works. If you want something, a partnership of guaranteed payment, this is not the place to be come and doing that. And this is not the bucket to be looking for that from. So anyway, what I have done, as I mentioned, I've created a builder subnet. If I find within 6 months or a year that I've obviously not created anything of built anything of value, in particular an agent, and whilst I still might be contributing to the community, I'm not actually building anything, I'll voluntarily take that down. The thing with protocols and stuff like this is, what is it? Good crypto protocols are all about monetary incentives. So it's good if it creates behavior that's value adding, bad if it's, value detracting or extractive. I think the open market sorts a lot of these things out. Obviously, you don't have to stake to my builder subnet. It could get 0 stake, and then therefore it would, not get any rewards from the protocol directly. I've staked one more to it just before starting this podcast to test it out. I've got some friends who will probably stake to it, because I'll tell them like, hey, stake to this thing. I want to see what your experience is like, and to support me. At the moment, that is mostly what it would be about. It would be about supporting the podcast. But, even though technically it's allowed and I could do that, I like to follow the spirit of the rules as well. So not just what is technically allowed. So that is the builder's bucket. I hope it's been informative for you today. Did I miss anything out? Anything you would like to know more about? Please let me know in the comments and things like this. So we'll jump on to the value for value section. So this podcast is available anytime, anywhere for anyone, and I intend to keep it that way. There'll be no gatekeeping. There will be no, even though, I could have said like, oh, you get access to the Mere Morpheus podcast if you stake to the subnet. No, that's not how I run things here. I put all the value up front, and if I get rewarded from that because it's valuable and people enjoy that, then that's what will happen. Now, what this does require is for all of the value I provide you, that you provide some back to me. And you can do this in many different ways. Time, talent, and treasure is the easiest way of explaining this. Time, sharing this with a friend, giving it a sub, a like, all of these sorts of things, providing feedback, joining me on the live streams that I do, which are 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on a Monday certainly for the next 2-ish months until I go traveling. You can also contribute some talent, graphics wise, if there's things that you are good at. If you're a meme master, I like putting memes in these, so you could help contribute some memes, provide answers to what I'm asking on the Discord. My website certainly needs an update, so if you're any good at websites or think, okay, someone go into the Mere Morpheus builder subnet, they see that it's just being directed to the YouTube playlist that I've created of this. I'll give I could write something up which would be useful to Kyrin and useful to explaining what the Mere Morpheus podcast is. All of these sorts of things are valuable. And then also treasure. So what I have done, there's quite a few ways that you can provide this now. So there is my Ethereum address, where you can just straight up send some more to on, whatever network, Base, Arbitrum, wherever Morpheus is available at. There is the way of using me as a staking reference. So if you're providing staked ETH, you could use the link that is down below, and I get a bonus from that apparently. Don't think anyone's tried it out yet, so I've yet to see that. You could also stake to the builder subnet now, which would be super cool and very much appreciated. And then finally, there's some other options, PayPal link down below. And if you want to use one of the podcasting apps, the modern ones where you can stream Bitcoin via the Lightning Network, a place like Fountain, TrueFans, Podcast Guru, Podverse, Castamatic, a whole bunch of different options there in the podcasting 2.0 world. So, much like the other podcast guy learnt, none of this is guaranteed. If I don't receive value from this podcast in terms of feedback, in terms of, the time, talent, or treasure, I'll realize like, okay, obviously it's not valuable to people, and it'll go away. Maybe it'll come back in a different form. I'm not sure. What I can promise is that there's going to be about another maximum 8 more episodes. And then I'm going to Europe for 2 months, and that'll be way too hard to do episodes whilst traveling. Once I come back from there, have got a steady location again, I'll think about what I want to do with this podcast in terms of starting up a season 2. Like I said, creating a more of an agentic podcast, or perhaps even doing interviews with people. Whole bunch of stuff I could do, but I need to also know what you guys want to hear and what you at home would love to hear. So that is going to be it for today. I really do appreciate you for joining in, and until the next time, ciao for now. Kyrin out. Bye.